This is Group 5, and this is Chapter 12, which is Effective Communication with Conferences. And so the learning targets for this chapter are 1, select conference options that are best suited to your students' needs and their parents' needs. 2, prepare for, conduct, and debrief feedback and goal-setting conferences. Number 3, prepare for, conduct, and debrief achievement conferences. And number 4, prepare for, conduct, and debrief intervention conferences. And so this chapter really talked about the different types of conferences, the purpose of them, who's involved with them, where they are, and what the goal is for each of the different types, and how to kind of figure out what type is best for the goal that you have for your students and their parents, if possible. And so it also talked about how a conference is a great way to communicate more information than things that are just on a report card, and it's like more detailed. And it said it used the word rich, which I really liked. That it was more of a rich conversation between all the parties involved. And so it started with an example that wasn't a great conference because it lacked the context and the meaning behind what the conference was about. And the purpose of conferences is to share information. And so just a quick introduction to the different types of conferences. Feedback is, giving strengths or next steps for a student's progress for mastery. Goal setting is considering the current learning status and setting goals. Achievement is sharing details about their growth over time. And then intervention is addressing an area of concern that may need immediate attention, depending on what it is. And so this chapter kind of really went in and delved into all of the details behind how to have good, effective conferences for students and parents.
Good stuff. So I have objective 1, select conference options best suited to students and parents' needs. So selecting the appropriate conference type depends on the purpose of communication and the specific needs of the student and family. Chapter 12 explains that conferences fall into 4 main categories, which are feedback, goal setting, achievement, and intervention conferences. To effectively select the right option, educators must first identify what information needs to be communicated. So, for example, for feedback conferences, they're best when students need guidance on strengths and areas for improvement. These are useful during the learning process to promote growth. You have goal setting conferences that are appropriate when students need help creating actionable steps to improve or reach mastery. Achievement conferences are ideal for communicating a student's progress or level of mastery, often involving parents and focusing on performance over time or at a specific point. And then the last one will be intervention conferences, which should be used when there are concerns regarding academic behavior or work habits that require immediate attention and a structured plan. The chapter emphasizes that most effective conferences are those that are purpose driven, clearly structured, and aligned to the student learning targets. Teachers must also consider whether the conference is formative, focused on improvement, or summative, which is focused on reporting the progress when making their decision. Ultimately, selecting the right conference type ensures that communication is meaningful, targeted, and supports student success.
Objective number 2 is prepare for, conduct, and debrief feedback and goal setting conferences. Feedback conferences allow students to hear someone else's opinion about their strengths and what they can improve on in their work. All feedback given is to give insights to the student to increase their learning. The materials needed during a feedback conference include one or a few work samples that can provide evidence, excuse me, and what the student needs are with respect to the learning target. As a teacher, you can ask students to prepare for the conference by thinking of questions to address needs. These questions help to activate prior knowledge and work reflection. In the conference, the student will always speak first, and the teacher quietly listens without interrupting. Feedback conference forums are helpful to students, and conferences usually take place in person at schools. The purpose of goal setting conferences is for a teacher and student to form a tangible plan for growth based on current evidence. Goals are short term or long term. The elements of effective goals align directly with three questions that frame the 7 strategies of assessment for learning. Where am I going? Where am I now? And how can I close the gap? This conference can be formal or informal. You want to begin by checking for understanding of the intended learning. As the teacher, you want to examine any work samples or self-assessments. Then guide them as needed in framing statements on what they need to learn or master at this point. If students have experienced well provided feedback, they can take their work home and conduct a goal setting conference with a parent or another significant adult.
I haven't really experienced like sending a conference home and having them do it. Have y'all done that before or had it as a student?
Closest thing I've
No.
done is a phone conference, and they've had to like sign the paper and
Yeah,
return it.
me too. I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, hadn't thought of that before.
Mm-mm. Okay. I had objective 3, prepare for, conduct, and debrief achievement conferences. So the purpose of an achievement conference is to share details about student growth over time, share details about a student's level of achievement at a point in time, to demonstrate competence or mastery of selected learning targets. The primary concern of an achievement conference is the students' learning. When conducting achievement conferences, the materials needed are learning targets or rubrics, which is used to describe the level of quality, portfolios showcasing their work, student self-reflections, and records of students' learning status. When doing achievement conferences, students can be involved. When students have kept a record of their achievements and have reflected on them, it prepares them to share their knowledge about their learning. Having students involved allows them to showcase their achievements to their parents and strengthen parents' beliefs about students' capabilities. So, moving into student involved achievement conferences. We have celebration, progress, and achievement status. Celebration conference, the purpose is to allow students to share the highlights of their learning achievements in our classrooms. It does not need to happen at the end of a reporting period. It can be totally separated from the grading and reporting functions of assessment. Progress conference, the purpose of this conference is to describe growth over time. It also does not need to occur at the end of a grading period, although that is a logical time to conduct it. In a progress conference, the conversation revolves around the changes and accomplishments in the student's academic performance over a period of time from a few weeks to a year, and growth portfolios are designed for this type of conference. So, achievement status conferences, those conferences focused on achievement status generally and does not take place at the end of a grading period. Its purpose is to share evidence that supports a judgment of level of achievement at a point in time. The achievement status portfolio provides the evidence to be discussed. So, preparing students to prepare for the celebration conference, it is important that we as teachers help them create a portfolio, let students select the artifacts they want to discuss, and help them take notes on each artifact, explaining why it is a celebration for them. To prepare students yeah, I just read that. Okay. To prepare students for Progress Conference, help them create a growth portfolio. Students should be prepared to share their learning targets to their parents and talk about what they did to improve and summarize what they can do or what they know now that they couldn't do it or didn't know before. And then to prepare students for achievement status conferences, we help them create the appropriate portfolio, achievement status celebration, or a project. With the achievement status portfolio, make sure students can describe how each artifact they share illustrates their learning. Preparing parents. Have students write an invitation to their parents to attend the conference. Accompany this invitation with a note from us informing parents of the purpose student-led conference, what to expect, including the agenda and their suggested role, to listen to their child first and then offer their observations and ask questions. The protocol for achievement conferences can be conducted between students and parents, or can be conducted with students and parents, or with students, their parents, and you. The first one is known as a two-way conference. The second one is known as a three-way conference. And following up, offer each participant the opportunity to reflect on the conference experience is one of the key successful communications. It's recommended that students and parents complete a conference evaluation form. Following up allows for reflection and helps us consider the power of the experience for our students and their parents.
Yeah, I think that part of the chapter had a lot, and it was really good things to think about with the creating the portfolio and connecting it with that, plus like the reflection piece afterwards with um, students and their parents. We like sometimes have like a little survey afterwards to see how they what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. But I thought that was a good point that it brought up.
That
Okay,
was
so
good.
for intervention conferences, that's scheduled to address a specific need or challenge that a student is having with either behavior, work habits, peer interaction, or academics. And so basically, this conference should happen after day-to-day interventions haven't worked and you've tried multiple things and you've documented those things. And the purpose is just so that you can have an established plan with all of the stakeholders present. So the student, the parents, and probably some other representatives from school like admin or a counselor. Um, it mentioned that sometimes a student is not present at our school. Pretty much any type of intervention conference, we do have the student present because we want to hear from them and their reasons and give them kind of responsibility and accountability in the process of what they're going to do or what interventions they can try on a personal level to succeed. And so the purpose is, again, to identify the problem and make the plan for improvement. So, because that's the goal, sometimes goal setting can happen because you may have like an achievable goal that you want to see happen to work their way up the plan. And so, the prerequisites or the things you have to have prepared for this conference is like your record keeping and making sure your records are good quality. So, for behavioral problems, that you've dated your records so that you can describe the behavior and when it occurred. And so for us at my school, we use our MTSS document for that. We also have been really making a concerted effort as a school to document the intervention that we did after the behavior instead of it just being a behavior log, because I feel like sometimes it can get kind of muddy with that. So that's something we've been really trying to focus on this year. And then this says, a copy of the rules that the behavior violated. So that could be in a handbook or just classroom rules in a syllabus or something. And then again, the interventions attempted and observed results. And so for us, we use our MTSS document. For work habits, we also use MTSS for that, and we have a behavioral school behavior or academic behavior section on our document. And so again, you date the evidence of the problem, the policy or expectations, and the record of interventions. Same thing for academic results or academic achievement difficulties, except for then you might also have work samples collected and also some test results if you're doing tests or if you have testing data from EOCs or things like that. And so you'll conference with the parents and hopefully the student as well, and identify and address the problem. And the goal is really to come up with a solution. And so we had to explain everything to students and parents on their level and not using a bunch of academic mumbo jumbo to talk with them, get their insight. So we always start with the student insight first. And then a lot of times we then move to the parent insight if they have anything that they want to add that they've noticed at home that's contributing to the issue. And then usually we have time for each teacher to share if we have it as a whole grade level team. And the student support specialist at our school is usually there, and she kind of leads the meeting because she has a student improvement plan that will be filled out at these type of conferences. And so on that student improvement plan, we have the responsibilities of the student, what they need to be working on, the responsibilities of the parent, what they can do to help their student be successful. And then we also have a spot for the responsibilities of the teachers or the school of what we're putting in place for that student. And so that's kind of how our plan is set up. And we fill it out. And usually we also have a timeline for either meeting again or getting in contact with the parents again by phone or whatever the case may be to follow up on the progress of the student, which can be sometimes, depending on when the initial meeting is, if it's towards the end of the academic semester, it might be the beginning of the next semester, or if it's earlier on, we might have it right before report cards go out just to kind of see what next steps are. And we do that too because their GPAs have to be a certain level to continue to take college classes, and so it like impacts kind of their whole path if they get too far behind. So we try to get that done early. These conferences almost always occur at school, but could be a phone conference. And because it's sensitive information, it just made a note that even if you're on the phone, to make sure you're doing it in a private area.
Good. All right. So I have reflection one. One of the most important takeaways from chapter 12 is the idea that conferences are more than just meetings. They are powerful tools for meaningful communication about student learning. Before reading this chapter, I view conferences mostly as traditional parent teacher meetings focused on grades. However, this chapter expanded my understanding by showing how conferences can actively involve students and promote ownership of their learning. I found it especially impactful that students can lead conferences and reflect on their own progress, which builds confidence, accountability, and deeper understanding. This aligns strongly with student centered learning and helps shift the classroom dynamic from teacher led to student driven. Additionally, I realized the importance of being intentional and prepared. The example in the chapter where the students simply show folders without understanding the purpose highlighted how ineffective conferences can be without clear goals and structure. This made me reflect on how critical it is for teachers to guide conversations with clear learning targets and evidence. Moving forward, I will prioritize using a variety of conference types in my classroom, especially feedback and goal setting conferences, to support continuous student growth rather than just only focusing on end of term results. I've never really, I would consider this more so like a goal setting conference for the conference that I have sat in on. But it was more so geared toward like a student having a IEP and having to adjust their accommodations based on like their behavior. But this chapter is really good.
Yeah, I think so too. I had reflection number two, which is how does this chapter align with or challenge my beliefs about teaching and learning? And so I feel like just at the school I'm at, like I have student conferences myself, like in class, usually about once a month or once every 6 weeks or so. And then I also have individual parent conferences twice a year with every family. And then our school as a whole has student led conferences and a reflection time where the parents come. So we have a lot of parent involvement. And so we have a lot of conferences on top of any intervention conferences that we have, which thankfully I usually don't have too many. I can kind of tie that into any of my individual parent conferences scheduled, but I have a couple of students who I've had to meet with both semesters and follow up with just because they're not on track for graduating with their associate's degree. And so I think it's important to be prepared and to set the clear goals as to what's happening. And so that aligns with my teaching for my parent conferences that I schedule for everybody. I send out the agenda ahead of time so they know exactly what we're doing. So it's kind of a combination conference. So I talk about their grades and things as well, but that's not the main focus of um, the conference. It's more kind of where they're at and what they need to do for their college admissions process and what they're thinking, just so that parents and students, and I'm all on the same page. So that's kind of what I'm most comfortable with. But then I do have intervention conferences and have had to sit in on those and lead those for the last several years with difficult parents and tears. There was one part of the chapter I liked where it's like, these are often teary, have discrete tissues, and I definitely have had to have tissues for conferences for students and for their parents. So I thought that was kind of like very relevant as well. But I think this whole chapter was really good, and it had parts that connected with other chapters, which I appreciated, like with the portfolios and assessments. So
I had reflection 3. What strategy or idea from this chapter would you feel most confident implementing and why? And I said I would feel most confident implementing achievement conferences. Said they are the conferences that I have already completed the most of, and I feel most confident when I'm implementing them. And doing these, they really come easy for me because as I get to know my students throughout the year, I can really tell parents about their achievements without even looking at artifacts, but I still have them on hand for parents to see. But I feel confident because I feel like the more you get to know their students, the more you can see their progress and their growth, and it makes it easier when you have these type of conferences, especially if parents don't understand that you can help bring it down when you really have tracked and monitored their achievement throughout the entire year.
Reflection 4 is what part of this chapter makes you feel uncertain, nervous, or hesitant about applying in practice? As a teacher, I can usually be nervous about engaging in intervention conferences because it usually involves speaking with parents along with the students. There's a lot of sensitivity involved as far as students' behavior in this day and age, so you have to be well prepared to defend your claims and provide reasonings that both parties are willing to get involved in. The good thing is that parents can give you insight on interventions they think will work well, and you keep in touch with them on their child's progress. Overall, I believe intervention conferences are necessary, but they can be scary to conduct as a new teacher.
That's good. So I'm going to wrap us up. So what was learned in our final thoughts. So, in conclusion, for chapter 12, reinforces that effective communication through conferences is essential for supporting student learning and building strong relationships between teachers, students, and families. Conferences provide opportunities to go beyond grades and engage in meaningful discussions about progress, strengths, and next steps. The chapter highlights that successful conferences require one, clear purpose and preparation, student involvement and ownership, use of evidence and learning targets, and then thoughtful follow up and reflection. By using feedback, goal setting, achievement, and intervention conferences strategically, educators can be educators can create more intentional, supportive, and student-centered learning and create a more intentional, supportive, and student centered learning environment. Ultimately, conferences are not just about reporting information that they are about empowering students to understand and take control of their learning journey.
awesome. Let me end.